You very much. Okay. Hey, y'all. This microphone is a little hot. Let me turn this down just a little bit, so you won't feel like I'm screaming at you. So, how was the morning? Was that okay? Did you like that? Okay. Thank you very much. My heart was beating through my chest. I wear a vest so that you can't see my shirt stuck to the back. By the way, wonderful introduction. There's at least five, and by the way, don't point these people out when I'm about to describe them, okay? Because there's like 8 of you who were not initially scheduled to be in this session. Yep, I see it. They're blinking more squares like that would be me. Let's just move it on, Greg. Okay. So we're going to talk about this thing called the 93% rule. Now, we spoke quite a bit in the last session about, getting to a level of thrilling customer service and all those types of things. But we drilled down, what I find people really want is to make sure they matter to someone else. And we had a couple of conversations. In fact, Shay is in the room. Where are you, Shay? She said something to me about, there she is. I thought you left. Okay. She's like, I had enough. That people, no matter what their circumstance, deserve dignity and respect. And many of you know that doesn't necessarily tie to whatever outcome they may have wanted. But if they are treated in a way that makes them feel like they were cared for, their families will thank you. Thank you for the way you treated my family. I know my son, And that's where the deeper dive comes from. So the 93% rule is at kind of the next level of this, because we all know it's important to care and to listen. We've all heard that in pretty much every seminar we've ever been to. But what I believe is that while it's important that we care and listen, what's even more important is that people know that we care and listen. For example, if I turn my back to you, I can tell you that I'm listening to you, but you'll emotionally respond to me as if I'm not. So I need to project something to you so the belief is there. And that's what the 93% rule is all about, what people really listen to. Now, much of it is derived from some work by a guy named Albert Mehrabian, who wrote a book called Silent Messages. And in that book, he talks about how people communicate with beyond vocabulary and words. So, and especially when it comes to how we choose who we like and who we trust. And so I think is really connected really well to the theme of the conference. But it's even closer than that. The idea is, how do people determine whether you are trustworthy or likable when they are under some duress? Or I don't know you that well. This is the first time we've crossed paths. What's in play when it comes to determining that? And my guess is that is the case for a lot of the people you interact with on a day-to-day basis. They're in an unfamiliar setting, and by the way, not just them, you too, right? There's deadlines looming, things pressing upon you, and what people pay attention to under those circumstances might surprise you. So my friend here helped me get connected, and I keep looking, and it's like I'm paranoid that people are like mocking me behind my back. So is he mocking me? Is he mocking me? Okay, there you go. They just went further behind the thing. Okay, very good. Don't mind the man behind the curtain. There's a line from a movie, I think. So what Albert Mehrabian came up with in a lot of this research is the 93% rule. So you know how I work. There should be a handout somewhere near you. And if you don't have something to write with, please borrow something to write with. And write your name on the outside front cover. Little geeky management tip, by the way. People ask me sometimes, why do you have people write their name on the outside front cover? And people think it's like, well, it's a psychological attachment. It's mine. I own it. And that's true. But people also leave their workbooks in the room. So that's how we get it back to you. Okay? All right. So, likability. It cannot in the right more, because one of the things I did here is that this is personal and professional. But if, and by the way, if I manage it well, I might be able to mend some relationships if I can be consistent over time with it and not just every once in a while. It also means that if I manage my tone of voice and body language poorly, I can absolutely decimate the relationships I have with other people. There are people in this room that know they have family members that have not spoken to each other in years. And they can't even tell you why anymore. They can tell you this: she had no business talking to me that way. And that's what resonates with them still. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take this and put it into your world, because you know I like you to participate. So you'll see, oops, there you go. When you trip, you should actually act like you trip by the way you're in front of the room. You ever seen people trip and act like nothing happened? And well, let's do this. Yeah, you tripped, we saw it. Okay, just saying. So there's an A list and a B list. And what we're going to do is have you do a little exercise. We're going to start with the A list. Now, what I want you to do is think of someone that you know or have known at some point in time that in your mind is the model of trust and respect. It could be someone that's a family member. It could be a friend. It could be a coach, a teacher. It could be someone you saw last week or someone you haven't seen in 20 years. It could even be someone in the public space, okay? I want you to think of that person. And what I want you to do is write down a couple of words or phrases that you would use to describe this person's tone of voice. For example, you might write sincere. And a couple of words or phrases that you would use to describe their body language. For example, you might write they make eye contact. Okay? So for the next 30 seconds, I'd like you to do that experience. A couple of words or phrases to describe the person, the tone of voice and body language of someone you hold in high regard. When you visualize them, what do they look like? When you hear their voice, how would you describe it? Going to call it cheating. Look at your neighbor's books and see if they wrote down something. If you like it, you can write it in your book as if it was yours. Okay, there you go. And you'll probably find that your neighbors wrote down words that are very similar to yours. There's a lot of us in the room, so make sure that we are efficient with our time, I'm going to find out what you wrote, but I'm not going to ask you to tell me. I'm going to actually look into your minds and tell you this is not a parlor trick, ladies and gentlemen. This is real stuff. And so I need everyone to clear your minds for everything except what you have on the A list. Just clear your minds for everything except the A list. Okay, so before we get started, someone in this section, your mind is too clear. I mean, everything just totally dropped out. I don't know what's happening. And there's someone in this area here, your thoughts are disturbing. I don't know how you ended up where you are based on where we are, but if you could circle back, I'll leave my number out front. Okay, so here's where we're going to go. HR's in here. HR's. Okay. So my guess is, for tone of voice, probably someone wrote sincere. Yeah, probably because I gave it out. I don't want you to be too impressed. People are, he has a gift. Okay, sincere, kind, warm, helpful, encouraging, comforting, strong. Some of us have strict, stern. Some of us have dynamic. All of these words, they sound similar to the words that you have. Cool, calm, and collected. These are words, by the way, that I hear everywhere from Shreveport to Sri Lanka. These are the same words that people choose. They also sound like the same words that people use to describe character, interestingly. So we tend to, I believe, assess people's character less by what they choose to say to us and more by how they choose to say whatever it is they're saying to us. When it comes to body language, some probably wrote down eye contact. Yeah? There's always someone that is still and I appreciate, wow, is he reading my book? So, but there's open, there's calm, there's level, there's, it's arms are not folded, approachable shows up here. And again, words that people kind of associate with character. Now, when you hear these words, and I've heard them, like I said, pretty much all over the planet, when you hear those words and you're describing this person, is this someone that you have to agree with? No. In fact, we can agree to disagree with this person. School, I cannot think of a single thing that he and I have really agreed about since we were in high school. You could pick any page of the newspaper and we would disagree and argue about it. But he's been one of my best friends since high school because our relationship is not built on agreement. Because honestly, folks, that's kind of shallow. It's built on mutual trust and respect, which we get from how we put our positions forth, not so much what our positions are. Making sense? So let's go to the B list. That's a little different person. I would like you now to think of the single most negative, cynical person you have ever met or worked with. Every time they open their mouth, toxin just drips from their lips. All they talk about is famines and plagues and locusts. The world is burning down. I would like you to describe the tone of voice of the king or queen of evil. What words come to mind for that person? Let's not write names in our books here, no initials. No caricatures, because remember, your name is on the front of the book. I'm just saying, could slow the career down. I also notice that no one needs help on this section, ever. In fact, I hear pencil lead snapping somewhere in the room. Like, yeah. Now, here's what, these are simple words, right? But even in the room, when I was asking you to describe the A-list, and I can see the whole room, which is a pretty good bird's eye view, when you were writing down those terms, everyone in the room took on those characteristics while you were writing. This is what I saw you doing. When it came time for the B list, the whole room shifted. Just describing these people makes them feel like they're almost in our space. Wow. Tone of voice for the B list: harsh, rude, curt, condescending, demeaning, belittling, sarcastic, unfriendly. Let's soften it a little bit. Talks down to everyone, or mumbles, speaks in a monotone. Am I in the right ballpark with this? What am I missing? I know I'm missing something. What else did you have? Loud, whiny. Vicious. Get them out. You'll feel better. Come on. Whether I hear you or not, just say them. You'll feel better. Honestly, it's like group. We're doing group. These sound like character words or character traits. When it comes to body language, the same thing comes up everywhere. What kind of eye contact do these people tend to make? There's three that always come up, and they're all represented in this room, but none is what everybody says across cultures. Because in every culture, there's too much and too little. Every culture. That's why you kind of need to know where you're going when you're traveling. Because you can be offending people thinking you're doing the right thing, but it's not appropriate where you are. But if I make no eye contact with you and I'm talking to you about something that is relatively serious, what do you start thinking about me? Something's off. He's lying. He's hiding something. Say that again, ma'am. Lack of confidence. He flat out doesn't even believe what he's telling me. Ain't that something? The other one that comes up is the cold stare, just the one that's just ripping. Everybody know the one I'm talking about, just ripping right. It says something too. Control, intimidation, low self-esteem. I threw that one in there. Because if you have to do this for me to get the message, maybe something's wrong with the message. Or perhaps maybe something's wrong with the messenger. Eye rolling comes up. Someone in this room probably wrote eye rolling on this. And here's the thing. All of us roll our eyes sometimes, don't we? I find in my life there are 5 or 6 good eye roll opportunities every single day. Is it just me, or sometimes they'll all come off the elevator, so you get your quota, like one elevator door, like there we go. But I'm talking about people that roll their eyes all day long. Have you been in the space with these people before? It's amazing. Look, I used to work at a place that opened at 8:30, so people were parking at 8:15 to go into a place that opened at what time? So 8:15, people are in their cars, and there was always a couple of people. We haven't opened yet. Everybody just be clear. They're walking to the car, walking to the front door of the business. Oh, here we go. I'm like, we're not even open yet. What are you doing? Oh, you know. And you can say anything to them. They'll roll their eyes. I'm going to get some coffee. There you go with coffee again. Why is coffee bothering you like that? Some of these people do make what I call the Free Willy sound all day. So that's a reference point that not everybody in this room gets. But if you know Free Willy, the Orca movie, they walk around all day surfacing like whales. And usually goes along with these words. Yeah, right. Whatever. Yeah, right. Whatever. Now, if we're all transparent here, we've all had a Free Willy moment, haven't we? As a matter of fact, most of you have never heard those 3 words back to back, Free Willy moment, and you still knew what I was talking about. We just don't have them all day. Have you been around people that do this all day? I mean, they're like energy vampires. It's like they're flying up around the ceiling looking for happy people. And if they catch one of you having a good day, the vampire just starts draining the happy. You know the legend of the vampire. What happens if a vampire bites you? You turn into a vampire. So here you are the next day. I don't know what happened to me. I used to be happy. Whatever. Some of these people will just use proximity. They'll just get in your personal space. And most of us have an area, 12, 18 inches around us. This is just seminar. We good, sir? Yes, we're good. Okay, because sometimes I pick the wrong person. I'm just saying. We're good? We're good. Okay. There's maybe 7 or 8 people in our entire lives that can get that close to us without an invitation. And all of them are not family. That's why a lot of us have our family reunion at the park. Wasn't your family reunion at the park? Spread out. Why is everybody right here? Come on, get the children. Get the children. Now, when we think about these people on the B list, how easy is it to agree with them? It's difficult. Even if we do intellectually, I can't tell anybody because I don't want to be guilty by what? But I'll tell somebody, but then I swear them to secrecy. Look, I really do know where he's coming from, but you better not tell him I said that. You hear what I said? Wow. I wonder what happens if the B list becomes pervasive in the space because the days are difficult. But more than that, I wonder if I got a chance to interview the last 10 people that you interacted with during the course of your work, whether they were employees or whether they were somebody in the public. And I got the chance to talk to them about the A list and the B list, which is not real deep. Everybody got your arms around the A list and B list already? So the last 10 people that you interacted with in the course of your business where you were, and then I asked them to describe you. This is a rhetorical question. Don't answer it. But the real question is, which list would those 10 people choose from? Would they say kind, helpful, encouraging, patient? Or would they say rude, harsh, whiny, vicious? Because if they use the A list to describe you, pretty much everything can go opposite the way they wanted it to, but they will still hold you, there will still be enough respect in the space to continue. If they use the B list to describe you, they can get everything they want. They're still going to write the governor a letter. Is there an A? We're going to talk about that. As a matter of fact, let's talk about that. It's an 8.5. Here's what makes it even, because this room is filled with leaders. Here's what makes it even trickier, is that I don't get to decide what list you put me on. So I can say I'm on the A list, but if that's not what you believe, it doesn't matter. That's why when people say, I didn't mean it that way, how do we respond? Yeah, you did. We did a free willy, that's right. That was impeccable timing, man. So there's a self-check question, because some of you are wondering, okay, so Greg, this is a lot of face-to-face stuff. We don't do a lot of face-to-face stuff all the time. Trust me, we'll get there. But I want to give you this self-check question. It has really worked for me, and I don't want you to write the answer to the question, just want you to write the question itself. And here it is. What does my 93% look like? What does my 93% look like? What tone of voice do I speak with in meetings? How do I look like when I'm moving? What do I look like when I'm moving through the halls of the building? What does my 93% look like? What does my 93% look like? What does my 93% look like? As a matter of fact, do me a favor and underline the word my, just to give it a little more emphasis. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's the only 93% I can really control. Now, I've had people try to influence my 93%. You have too. But the list I'm on is the list I choose. It's that simple. But Greg, I don't have to understand. I've been through the mill with some people too. But where the list I'm on is the list I chose. Now, this is what I do for a living. And it still seems odd to me after all these years, but this is what I do for a living. You think a question like that might be important for somebody like me? How often would you guess I ask myself that question? All day, every day, especially if I'm on location, it's every 10 to 15 seconds or so. Because especially for the people that are important to me, it is always showtime. Always showtime. I had a guy tell me, by now you guys know I'm a storyteller, and sometimes I just don't even have the room for all this. I know y'all got some stories too, right? I was doing a seminar, and a guy sat about 3 rows back, and this was like half-day course I was doing, and this is what he did for the first 90 minutes. For 90 solid minutes, this is what he's doing. So, is he participating in the seminar? Yes, he is. Is anybody unclear as to what his message? Let me show you again. What is he doing? I don't want to be here. How long is it going to be? You don't want to be. This was the most demonstrative person, participative person in the entire room. And also, I understood to be a great source of material. So, I'm going to go see where this goes. So he raised his hand finally. Okay, I'm not straight elbow, not quite, good call. And I said, yes, sir. He said, you know what? You need to send customers to this class. How about that? And I'm thinking, I have hit the mother lode right here. So, sometimes you don't ask people yes or no questions. Ask more open-ended questions because they'll tell you more. I said, so why should we send customers to this class? I'm just curious. He said, you should see what those people are like coming in here every day. Moaning and groaning and whining like somebody's sticking them with a fork. They get on my nerves. And I said, tell me more. He said, for example, at my desk, all they need to do is come by and sign this form. I got a form. They sign the form. That's all I need. I don't need to know what's going on in your life. Why are you still here? This is not a confessional. You signed it. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye now. And I said, are all your customers like that? Now you translate this into, okay. I said, he said, seems like it to me. Now, what was interesting was that there were a group of people seated behind him about 3 or 4 rows back. I didn't find this out who they were until the break, because during the break, that's when people will tell you what's going on during the break. During the plenary session, people are very polite. They'll clap. But as my grandmother would say, let there come a break. Psst, Greg, come here. Let me tell you what's really going on. Come on back here. Come on. Stairwells, parking decks. And they tell you the scoop, and they always do the same thing. Hey, me and you, don't tell nobody. CI. So I said, I'm looking, and as this guy's going through this tirade, these 5 or 6 people that are seated 3 or 4 rows behind him, this is what they're doing. And we're having a full-bore conversation in here with these. It's him. Because they told me later that if somebody called the office and he answered the phone, his reputation was so bad that people would hang up and call back again to see if they could get around the evil one. So what was he missing? The point, maybe? That the people that he interacts with on a day-to-day basis, all they were doing was just holding up a mirror into which he looked and saw his reflection and said they need to go to the course. Now, I know sometimes it is them, but I also have grown up lately to know that they control the stimulus, I control the response. And once I settled in on that, I had great peace, because people will try to drag you to the B list all day long. If you end up there, shame on you, because you allowed it. Greg, you don't know the people. I don't have to know. You know, nod your head at me if you know there's people, that's their mission every day is to drag you to the B list. Well, what about the 93% rule on phone calls? Is it possible that it applies to phone calls? What do you think? How so? You can't see anything. Oh yeah, the tone, you can feel it. I'm gonna make some of you paranoid here for a few moments, but I'll rescue you from it. I'm gonna make you paranoid, but I will rescue you from it. I used to work in a call center, which is basically a people farm. I don't know if any of you have ever worked in a call center before, but cubicle, and I was a supervisor there, and there was this one person on my team that they gave me all of what we called the soup calls. That's supervisor calls, like escalations. Soup call all day long. And nobody else was doing this all day long. And I'll come back to that in a second, because what I learned through that experience, or had it reinforced, is that I don't know how I'm able to do it, but I can feel you rolling your eyes if you're talking to me on a phone call. So if you're doing that, I can feel it. Because once you start rolling your eyes, listening switches start turning off. And when listening switches start turning off, tone of voice always changes. So if you roll your eyes when you're talking to people on the phone, understanding that you're provoking something, not because you want to, because maybe they have been driving you crazy. But here's the other one, the yap yap thing. If you know what the yap yap thing is, just show me what it is. If you've ever done that while you're talking to somebody on the call, they can feel it. And it escalates the situation. The windmill. Can you get on with it? The straight arm voice. Yes. Yes. The last call of the day voice. Did you know that there's such a thing as a last call of the day voice? And I don't mean you're leaving in 5 minutes. I mean you were supposed to be gone 5 minutes ago, and they still got you on the phone. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. It's even worse if a vacation is on the other side of that call. That person that was doing all the soup calls, I actually just went by that person's cubicle one day, and all day long, this is what they were doing. All day, that's what they were doing. And supervisor, have you figured this out yet? You're provoking them. But she thought because they couldn't see her, it didn't matter. That year, we instituted having everybody have a mirror at their desk. And the behavior for some people changed immediately, because whatever you see is what they hear. Ain't that something? They didn't move the mirrors? Oh no, some people got too much into the mirrors. That's a whole different seminar. My mirror not big enough. I can't see. Because you know there's always, y'all know there's always. Is it possible that the 93% rule applies in emails? Oh yeah, but you can't see or hear anything. Oh, they come across though. I'm going to give you a few of these. They're going to make you paranoid. Don't say I did it, just correct if it happened to be you. I don't need 50 exclamation points at the end of a sentence. I just don't. One exclamation point says this is important. 50 says you are an idiot. That's how people read it. I don't need 50 question marks. And as a matter of fact, do I have anyone here that speaks Spanish? Just to be, so you know I got a little range, it would be an exclamation point at the beginning and the end inverted, just so you know I got a little range, okay? I don't need 50 question marks. If there's one question mark at the end of a sentence, and that sentence is, what is this? I read it, this is how I read it. What is this? 50 question marks reads very differently. What is this? That means I know what it is. Why did you send it to me? That's what I'm trying to say here. Spell check. Just a word about spell check. You can actually have the word in the sentence and it's spelled correctly, but it has no business in that sentence. I meant to say we're enhancing court operations, and I typed we're enchanting court operations. It's like, they're using magic now? Well, okay then. Poor grammar in an email has me thinking less of your intelligence. Never send an email when you're mad. You've heard this before. Have any of you just left it in drafts and went back and looked at it and were like, thank you? Because I was going to be unemployed today if I... All capital letters that's one of the oldest ones, because all capital letters are shouting. But that goes before emails. Anybody remember the interoffice envelope? With a little string on it, everybody sign it. So I know I'm not the only one that old in this room. Even then, in a printed memo, all capital letters was perceived as too much. Here's another one that's kind of interesting. Our signature. Sometimes the message only has 8 words, but you have to scroll through the signature. And it basically says this: I am the master of the universe and all things I survey. It's a different font than the rest. Have y'all seen this before? Like, okay, whoa. Yes, ma'am.
What do you do with folks who don't realize they use bad grammar?
Then you should teach them. Because some people don't know. There's people coming into the workplace right now that still think LOL is appropriate in a business email. or emojis. We'll talk about that but that's teachable. But once I've taught you, now I'm holding you accountable. That's the other piece of that too. Do you know that most people read your email with the last tone of voice they heard you speak with? Think about it. You do it. So if you're trying to compliment me and you say, "Great job, Greg," but the last time you spoke to me, you were a condescending, arrogant snob, and you send me a message that says, "Great job, Greg." Yeah, right. Jerk. We do that. We don't do it consciously, but we do that. So it is always showtime. Is it possible that the 93% rule applies in meetings? Absolutely. A couple of us were talking about this when we were getting started. See where people are going to sit and how they choose where they're going to sit. Virtually everybody that comes in that door, the first thing they do is this. Okay. Isn't that something? I tend to introduce myself to people when they come into meetings very often. I say hello, that kind of thing. And not long ago, I just said good morning to this guy. He was coming in the room. He did this. And he didn't know I was a speaker. By the way, he tried to apologize later. I let him. Yeah, because he didn't send me the check. Just saying. You okay, ma'am? She's like, I'm feeling every bit of what you're saying here. You know these people, don't you? You know them. Where you sit, people measure and monitor that. They look at where you go. There are people who, and by the way, there's a reason this happens, where people tend to fill the room up from the back. Almost all of us are looking for the real estate in the back half of the room, except those of us who know we need to help. But even us, we'll sit back in the back and squint. I'm sorry. I got right in somebody's kitchen just then. I don't know who it was. No, I'm saying that I can tell sometimes the dynamics of the group by where people choose to sit. I can see who's comfortable with who and who isn't comfortable. Like one of the things people tell us when we go to these conferences, I hear it all the time, you've heard it. This is a conference. The people that you work with, you see them every day. So at a conference, what should you do? Meet other people. But guess what we do? We sit where we're comfortable. It's just part of what we do. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a thing. But we have to make an intentional decision not to follow those habits, right? So at lunch, I dare you to sit next to people you have never met before and feel that level of discomfort and understanding that you are growing when you do that. Is it possible the 93% rule applies in virtual meetings? This never used to be part of this presentation. Some of you have seen me do the 93% rule before. The pandemic changed everything. And so I want to, again, I'll make some of y'all paranoid, but I love you. I'm only telling you this because I'm only here for a little while, so I'm just going to be straight with you. Cool? By the way, I'm kind of old school. When I say cool, I think somebody's going to say it back to me. Wait your turn. Cool? So virtual meetings. Some of you remember the pandemic was upon us so quickly that we were like, okay, so once we started kind of collecting, I said, well, let's go to Zoom. And, because Zoom was really first, and Teams was already there, but all of these different tools started. But a lot of us didn't have cameras on our computers. And so we started ordering these cameras, and many of you know they were ordered like 6-7 months or in some cases. So we're now on Zoom calls with no cameras, and we have the little black box that has our name across it. And even when we got cameras, we still didn't turn them on. And let me tell you what people are thinking when you're in a Zoom meeting and your camera is not on. They're thinking, are they paying attention? Are they even listening to me? Are they rolling their eyes? What are they doing? They don't think positive things. They don't think he's taking care of his child. They never think that. They think, what are they doing that they're not engaged in this meeting? If you're a leader, you need to have your camera on. Full stop. But Greg, what if because that's when people start telling me about prep time. But I don't have look, if I called a meeting at this conference, let's say we all came to this conference and one of the requirements was to have a black paper bag over your head with your name written on the front. How weird would that be? Well, it's that weird on a Zoom call too. The background is important. The background is really important. I was on a kickoff call for a Fortune 100 company. The CEO was delivering his remarks during COVID, and somehow he missed that his background was not changed. And we were looking into his laundry room during his entire keynote. Basket of clothes sitting on top of the washing machine. And I'm thinking, I don't have his number, but I wish somebody text him, because I just imagine the text messages that were flying across that company. He don't even know, does he? And by the way, he's mixing colors with whites. Look at that. Make sure that the lighting is not behind your head. It should be in front of you, because then you're a silhouette. If you got to do this meeting from your bedroom, please blur your background. I don't want to see your headboard. Have y'all seen the stuff I'm talking about? And again, when we do these things, we teach other people to do that as well. I now have a pretty hard and fast rule. Even if a client is hiring me to do a Zoom, because there's a lot more of that going on now, my requirement is that if you're in my Zoom, you have your camera on. If your camera's not on, you cannot be in this training. Because if one person's camera is not on and everybody else is, what is everybody else thinking? Well, why he get? And that's what they remember from the meeting. Ain't that something? Is it possible that the 93% rule applies even when you're not aware of it? Probably most significantly when you're not aware of it. What time roughly would you say my presentation started? 10:31? 10:31? Maybe a little earlier than that? Because I actually saw some of you checking in yesterday at the hotel. So my presentation was already up and running. Because had I been in that line waiting to check in, been a condescending, arrogant snob, and then try to stand in front of you to talk about this stuff, I'd have zero credibility. I had a funny elevator ride with 2 or 3 people that may be in this room yesterday. It was hilarious because we couldn't figure out how to we couldn't get the key on the thing fast enough. It's like, well, you use yours, you. And so we passed floors and all this kind of stuff. My presentation was already underway. I came here from Philadelphia yesterday. My home was in Atlanta. I was in a conference in Philadelphia all last week. And the Philadelphia airport, I knew that I was going to be going from Philadelphia to Detroit to Omaha. And I knew that there was a very good chance that one of you could have also been on each of those flights. So I'm asking myself, what does my 93% look like? Because it is showtime. I saw some of you at the reception last night. It was showtime. And it's funny because I was the only one that didn't have a badge on, and that was troubling to some of y'all. Because I was walking by, I was like, somebody needs to get security because he is eating the little wrap things. And when you're not aware of it is when it's most powerful. And I would say over the course of a regular day, you're not aware of it 98% of the time. What does my 93% look like? What does my 93% look like? What does my 93% look like? Now, to be fair, sometimes we're not having a good day. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And I should also say that I'm very real about this. I don't care about this with everybody, because I don't have that kind of bandwidth. Everybody got me? If you ain't in the circle, I don't care what you think. But what I found is that when I am focused on the circle, it goes other places too. Because I don't want to shut it down, shut it off, and shut it, because I might do it at the wrong time. Is that making sense, everybody? So lessons from around the world. And then we're going to do some FAQ, and then we'll see if there's any questions, we'll field them, okay? So I've gotten a chance to travel a little bit, and I mentioned that to you before. This is just something that's on the screen here. So I had the opportunity to travel to Amsterdam. Anybody here been to Amsterdam? Mm-hmm. That's all we saying. Those of you, everybody raise their hands like, say less. They know what I'm talking about. Y'all think it's Las Vegas? What happened? No, it's Amsterdam. They don't sell coffee at the coffee shop. I'm just saying, if you've been, you know. So I did something that there's a couple of really, probably not a couple, there's countless quirky things about me, but one of them is I love authentic Chinese food. Because I don't get a lot of it at home. So in Amsterdam, especially down near Central Station, anything you could eat from anywhere around the world is just right there. So I go to this Chinese restaurant, and the guy he's got slightly accented English, but I could tell he was fluent in English, and it was like, okay, that's cool. Then I saw him go to another table. I don't speak German, but I know he was speaking German fluently to that table, taking their order. And he went to another table, and I don't speak French, but I know what French sounds like, and I know he was speaking fluent French to the people at that table. And he was doing this like back and forth. So I'm always, you know me, material. So he came back to the table, and I said, I noticed something, that you are taking orders in lots of different languages. How many languages do you speak? He said 8 fluently, and there's a few dialects that I also know of a couple. I was like, wow. I said, well, which one do you find is most, useful in what you do? He said, that's easy, body language. This is a man who has mastered 8 languages. And he said, the entire world understands a smile. Ain't that something? I actually got a chance also to go to Oxnard, California. I did not know that there was a city called Oxnard, California, but it actually has an airport and everything. I was doing the 93% rule talk as part of a larger conversation, and there was this guy that was just cracking up. I mean, just laughing. And the longer the talk went, the less he laughed. The longer the talk went, the less he laughed, until he had this very sullen look after about 45 minutes or so. And I noticed it, but what I've learned is not to get caught up on that, because people be peopling, life be lifing. Right? So I didn't say anything about it. I just kind of kept going. And he approached me at the end of the seminar. He said, did you notice I was laughing a lot at the beginning of the conversation? This 93% rule conversation. I said, yeah, I did notice. He said, did you notice I stopped laughing? I said, yes, I did. But I don't consider that to be my business. He said, no, I want to tell you why. Because I was sitting there listening to you, I realized what my daughter has been trying to tell me. His 15-year-old daughter. She's been trying to tell him about the A list, B list, I don't feel respect, all that stuff. And as the longer he listened, and by the way, as he's telling me this, folks, his eyes are welling up. And he said, thank you. I need to have a different conversation at home. Because it was going over his head, and he didn't know why they weren't. Isn't that something? Then I got a chance to go to Sri Lanka, which is where that is. Colombo, Sri Lanka. And I actually got a chance, Sri Lankan Airlines hired me to come to Sri Lanka, which is really great flight, by the way. But what I did not know, that at the time, Sri Lanka was in the middle of a civil war. the Tamil Tigers were like the insurgents. And so they were attacking. And so I get off the plane, and there are, if you remember right after 9/11, how law enforcement was finger on the guard, that kind of thing. That's what was all over the airport. We're driving to the hotel, and there are machine gun nests at every block. In fact, on some streets, they'd put up those little barriers so you had to do this so you could not pick up speed enough to ram. And that's where I am. The hotel where I was a half mile away from the presidential palace, which had been attacked by the Tamil Tigers the week before I got there. And and here's the thing, these were some of the kindest, gentlest people I have ever met anywhere on the planet. And I've got to ask. So one of the folks at the hotel, I said, look, you all have, and everybody is just so nice. I would be stressed out. And he said, we figured out a long time ago, we get to choose how we approach life. Now, I know things get rough at your courthouse from time to time, but I wouldn't say it's a civil war. And if these people can choose to present themselves that way, what excuse do we have? And then Brooklyn, New York, which reminds me that the 93% rule in the A list and B list, they are regional. Do I have any New Yorkers, anybody from New York in the room? There are some New Yorkers that think Southerners are rude because it takes you all doggone day to take my order. Well, I don't need sweetie, baby. What's all that about? Just bring me my food. Because the A-list in Tupelo, Mississippi looks different than the A-list in Brooklyn, New York. And if you're not aware of that, you could end up getting your feelings hurt when you shouldn't get your feelings hurt. So we were doing this seminar, the U.S. Postal Service at the time, I remember. We had 800 people come in over the course of 4 days. Because in New York, everybody's right there. I mean, it's a cattle call. So morning, afternoon, for 4 days. And at the end of the last day, we were talking about the 93% rule, and the lady raised her hand, and she did it like this. So just looking at this, what signal is she sending to me? Something's not adding up for her. People are sending us these signals all the time, folks, okay? And I said, and we'll call her Sarah, okay, because that's her name. And so I'm not afraid of her anymore. So she said, have you been, in front of the entire room, have you been saying this stuff all week? And I said, what stuff? She said, this whole 93% thing. Have you been saying that all week? I said, yeah. She said, I wondered what was going on. Because Sarah was the last person from her work group to come to the seminar because they came in waves so that somebody was managing the shop. And the people who came on that Tuesday morning, that Monday morning, really got into the whole A-list. It just clicked for them. And they went back and they told everybody in the office except Sarah. And for the next 3 days, this is what she heard. 93% Sarah. 93% Sarah. They left Post-it notes on her computer that said 93%, but none of them told her what it was about. Nobody. Now, does that seem kind of cruel? Well, it depends. I think it's brilliant because they told me during the break, as long as anyone had ever known Sarah, she's been walking around with a 2x4 on her shoulder. Not a chip, a 2x4. And they were trying to see if I could do something with it. So I said, yeah, we've been saying that all week. And she said, well, look, did you see them though? Did you see what I have to deal with? Right over her head. Now, because there are comedians at this convention, I've spotted most of you. I got most of y'all tagged out because your 93% rule is giving it away. Some of y'all are going to walk through the next couple of days and you're going to walk up on somebody, 93%. I know. I don't even know what. Raise your hand if you're a candidate to do that. Raise your hand. Look, see, I told you. And you know, if it was somebody that heard it, they'll probably laugh because we don't always know when we've slid to the B list. So it's just a gentle reminder. So from time to time, someone says that to you while you're here in Omaha, take it with a grain of salt, you know, laugh it off. If, however, everybody at the convention, even people who did not come to this workshop, are saying 93, you know, people you never met before, the hotel staff, 93%, ma'am, then you might have something going on you need to address. I'm just saying. Frequently asked questions. So I'm going to tag a couple of these, and if we have some more come in, we'll field them, okay? Frequently asked question number one I get is this. Well, Greg, I used to be on the A list, but I've been through some stuff. And I'm on the B list now, and I don't like it, but I don't know how to get back. That's quite a question. I honor somebody that was that vulnerable to ask that. They said, what should I do? I said, well, let me tell you what to stop doing first. Because what you're probably doing now is you're hanging around people who are on the B list. Stop hanging around those people and start hanging around people who are on the A list. Because even if your mind doesn't change, your behaviors will start mimicking what you're seeing and your mind will follow. Because ladies and gentlemen, the A list and B list, both groups are always recruiting. But the B list, they recruit aggressively. This is how they, you know what's going to happen. You know, I don't even know why you even going through it. I'm trying to tell you. You try to keep giving these people a chance. That's what the B list does all day long. The A list recruits by their behavior. You can join us when you're ready, but we ain't coming over there to get you because we got peace over here. Ain't that something? Here's another one. I've been asking myself that question, what does my 93% look like? And I keep coming up with the A list, but you know, since your seminar, people are telling me I'm on the B list. Now I know I'm on the A list. If everybody around you tells you you on the B list, guess what? You're on the B list. Because remember, the receiver of the message gets to judge, not the sender. That's why I didn't mean it that way. Never works. It never works because that's how I received it. Here's another one. Greg, I'm stuck in a situation where I have to interact with somebody who is stapled to the B list. I have no choice. I can't avoid them. They are part of my everyday routine, and I cannot get around them. And I don't know what to do about that. Interesting. Anybody else in that situation where they are in your path every day? I said, what I would encourage you to do is to stay on the A list because that's your choice. In fact, you're the only person that controls that. If you let them, like I said earlier, if you let them pull you over, then they won. It's time to stop getting mad at them and get mad at you. Because if I know who I am, you can try it all you want. But I decide whether you win or lose that battle. In fact, Albert Schweitzer, 1952 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, says something that rings to this. This is not in the workbook, but you all will be getting, I think, a copy of the slides through the app and stuff like that. So here's what one of his quotes was. Example is not the main method of influence. It's the only method of influence. All of us have heard, lead by example. Haven't you heard that? In fact, we've heard it ad nauseum. Sometimes we use these things too much, folks, and they fall on deaf ears. We believe in empowerment, but there is none. So stop telling me that. If you just don't lie to me. Just tell me I don't have a say. I'll know what to expect when I show up. I got a chance to be a new supervisor. What time are we officially wrapping? Okay, got it. I got a chance to be a new supervisor I'm not going to tell you that one. I'll tell you this one. Has anyone ever said good morning to somebody and they didn't say it back to you? How does that make you feel? It does. It leaves most people feeling some kind of way, right? I would ask you why. Why does it leave you feeling some kind of way? Because here's where I'm going with this. I would think that you're saying good morning to them because you want them to have a good morning. If they're not saying it back to you and it's making you upset, it makes me wonder whether you have another motive. Or, how about that? If I say good morning to you, that is my wish for you. It does not require reciprocation. Reciprocity, I think, is a better word. It's good morning. That's all I need. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
If I go to New York and say good morning, they look at you crazy. Like, why the hell are you saying good morning?
Well, so here's the thing. It is how you say good morning and where you say it that will sometimes dictate how people respond to you. Look, there's places like we're in Nebraska. How many of you are from the Midwest? You're from the Midwest. Let me tell you, even in like when I do seminars, if I'm in the Midwest, the laughter is more muted. People appreciate it the same way, but they don't laugh as much. If I'm in the South, I have to shorten my presentation because people, because all that time gets added. It's a real thing. If you've traveled to Europe before, you know it's very simple. The further north you get, the more muted. And in fact, it's interesting. If you look at migration patterns, you see people go to places that are very similar to the places that their lineage is from. But my job is not to determine whether I'm doing a good job or not based on your laughter. I had something that I was tasked to come say. And I'm going to let you work with it. Now, do I need to do my homework? Yeah. Do I need to know what some of the things are that you go through? Sure. That's all research. But ultimately, I've had one person actually got mad at me after the 93% rule. I don't appreciate that. I said, well, why don't you appreciate it? Because I finally got to the point where I didn't care what those people think. And now you're making me rethink it. That's what the person said at the end. Because we can put ourselves into bunkers like that. But the job you do is far too important for that. It can't ever feel like cruise control. And it's not just because of the people everybody, attorneys, because I heard everybody tries to give y'all a little bit of a turn when they come to the courthouse, right? No matter where they come through. But there's a greater mission. The administration of justice is one of the primary pillars of this nation. I don't mean to sound like I'm doing too much with it, but that's how I feel about it. And I actually need to apologize to you because before I went to that first NACM conference in 2008, I had no idea. I had no idea the things that you see and have to experience and endure on a day-to-day basis as you are overseeing the administration of justice. I was clueless, and I'm not a dumb person. I just didn't know. Ain't that something? I had a guy, when I became a new supervisor, I knew something was kind of weird because my predecessor actually had a sign in his cubicle that said, "The beatings will continue until morale improves." Some of you heard that's a real thing. The beatings will continue until morale improves. So I followed him as a supervisor. I said good morning to people. Nobody would say good morning back. For 2 weeks, good morning. And I wasn't aware that at that point, and I think about it now, that sometimes you're not dealing with you, you're dealing with their history. What they were doing was waiting me out. Because every time we get a new supervisor, flavor of the month, they're all nice when they first get here. So they were waiting. But at the 3-month mark, I'd say good morning. Good morning. Because I didn't stop saying it to them because they didn't say it back to me. But there was one guy, for 90 days, he never said good morning to me. And everybody I know that worked there would have given me a pass if I stopped saying good morning to him. In fact, people told me, why are you wasting your time? And I'm like, I'm saying good morning to him because I want him to have a good morning. And about 90 days in, I said good morning, and he did this. I tried not to make too much out of it. I was like, me and him need to be on a postage stamp together now. That was a moment. He turned out to be one of the highest performing people on my team. But he had been bruised too much by the people who sat in my chair before me. So all he needed to know was that he's not being rude to me. He's like, I'm not trying to set myself up for that hurt again. And he brought other people along with him. Just because I said good morning without a need for reciprocity. Everybody got where I'm going with this? What does my 93% look like? What does my 93% look like? What does my 93% look like? What does my 93% look like at lunch today? What does my 93% look like in the afternoon sessions? What does my 93% look like when I'm going across the Sky Bridge back to the hotel? What does my 93% look like when I'm checking out later this week? What does my 93% look like? I know it's a lot. But as my mother used to say, you knew the job was tough when you took it. And if you didn't, you should have figured it out by lunch. True or false? So I'm going to pause here for a second. If anybody has any questions or you want to throw something up here. Yes.
So, since you're always on show or
Showtime. Mm-hmm.
do you get to go to the B list and you hang out with your friends on the patio?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I did that, but then I got too comfortable with it. And they stopped inviting me to the patio.
Gotcha.
So we almost kind of set up an informal rule like, okay, first 10 minutes, get it off your chest. After that, I got my stuff. I'm not trying to hear your stuff. So yes. I mean, I had 3 teenage daughters at the same time. Y'all don't think I was on the B list from time to time? I'm just saying. It happens. I just understand that I don't have to live there. I'll visit it for a moment and immediately go, okay, Greg. And so I know it makes a difference to people at the grocery store when I say good morning to them or hello to them and they don't know me. I had one guy say to me, thank you. And I don't know why it landed on him that way. I don't care. But something about me saying good morning to him was transformative for his day. And I'm good with that. I kind of feel like that's my job. Not this job, my human job, to be that kind of person. So thank you for that question. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the reason what you said is so important is because sometimes people are on the B list and they don't even know they are. They think they're projecting something. So when you say good morning, it's you remember notify your face earlier? Well, I didn't tell you is that she started laughing when I said that. Because it dawned on her, it's like, oh, because she didn't even know she was there. I would, in my poker vernacular, say this. I'll see you that one and I'll raise you this one. That if you are a person that really strives to be on the A list, and that is you are intentionally, willfully, even when it's hard, trying to do that, and you have a B list day, people will tend to respond in rescue mode to you, which is what you're talking about. It's like they don't necessarily, but they know that's not, we will get if I'm most of the time I'm on the A list and I'm on the B list, people will not think badly of me. They will think something is off and they will try to rescue me. If, however, I'm on the B list all the time, and then all of a sudden I show up on the A list, people are thinking, oh, what does he want? Somebody must have posted a job. He's trying to get. They always think something nefarious of me. So can we be there all the time? No, not if you're living and walking around in this world. But if you are intentionally aware, and that's why we do the A list and B list thing. That's keeper stuff, right? Some of us need to ask ourselves that question before we go into our meetings. Okay, what does my 93% look like? Maybe I should ask, this is Danielle. My daughter's Danielle. You heard that earlier. Maybe I should ask Danielle, okay, Danielle, you know the meeting I'm going into. What does my 93% look like? And if I ask her, I'm asking her because I trust her. And whatever answer she gives me, I need to express gratitude. Because if she says, well, Greg, you have been kind of snapping at people today. Thank you. But if I do this, see, Danielle, that's why I don't ever ask you. Now, you always, see, you trying to bring me down. You know, she will never be honest with me in that same way again because she knows that I'm really just trying to get her to validate my little fantasy world around here. So people will find you where you are. None of us are perfect, but the idea is, am I willfully making sure that when I'm around people that matter, the people I serve to be included, that I am projecting something that says I'm encouraging, helpful, kind, patient, and stern, and strict, and strong, because those things are not in opposition to the A list. Some of us have if we put people on the A list that you don't mess with, because they always tell you what it's all about. But we love them for that because they tell us the truth. Any other questions? We got any questions from the online crew? No? We do not? So, how do we do, ladies and gentlemen? Good. Awesome. Look, that's still provoking some people in this are like, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your conference and serve some people well. Thank you.